Alright, what's up guys? New video today. We are doing a brand new tier list. Today we're doing Destiny Heroes. Heroes in general have been one of the most requested videos that I've gotten for tier lists. Unfortunately, heroes are just such a big archetype. I couldn't possibly do all of them in one video. I would die before I'd finish. So we're definitely not going to be able to do that. But I am going to split up all of the heroes into all of their various archetypes. I've already got Neospatians on the channel if you want to go check that out. Today we're doing Destiny Heroes, one of my other very favorite hero archetypes. If there's any specific tier list that you want to see, let me know in the comment section below. I might do like a voting or something like that for the next one, like a community voting or something. So if there's something that you definitely want to see, let me know in the comment section below. Let's not waste that too much time. Let's get started. So right off the bat, we got Destiny Hero Dystopia, not Dusk Topia. This card is, and just to be clear, really clear real quick, I review these based on how good they are in their archetype. With heroes, you've got a twofold question. How good is it not only in Destiny Heroes, but how good is it in heroes at large? Because basically all of the different hero archetypes are actually all played all together in one big hero deck now. It's not like you don't just play Destiny Heroes, you don't just play one or the other, but I'm going to review it based on how good it is, both in pure Destiny Heroes and also Heroes. So right off the bat, we start with the Destiny Hero Dystopia. This card is, I'd say, pretty decent. I'd say somewhere around B tier. Basically what this card does is, when it's, the good thing about this card is its fusion materials are very easy to fulfill. All it requires is 2 Destiny Hero monsters, so you can just Destiny fusion into this very easily. Not a lot of requirement, not a lot of difficulty there. So definitely I'd say probably B tier is about fair for this card. So what it basically does is when it's summoned, you can target a level 4 or lower Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard and then banish and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack. That effect is kind of decent when you're, I guess, going into time. It's actually a half decent effect. If time is running low, or like if time is called and the judge asks you, can you do damage in this phase? You can do damage in this phase because all you have to do is activate Destiny Fusion, activate this, target Malicious, inflict 800. So that effect is pretty decent. Also, the materials are really good. The whole point of Destiny Fusion in a pure hero deck is just to put just materials in the graveyard, so it doesn't really matter what you summon. Obviously, the best thing to summon is Phoenix Enforcer, but this card is actually like half decent. It does burn damage. Also has another effect where if its attack is different from its original attack, you can quick effect pop a card on the field. How you do that, there's a variety of ways you can do that. Honest, the Honest Neos, the elemental hero Honest Neos, a variety of other ways to do it, but I'd say B tier is about fair for this one. Alright, next up we've got Destiny End Dragoon. This card is another one I'd say probably is like a B tier card. The reason I'm putting it in B tier is because this card, unlike some of the other Destiny Hero cards, its fusion requirements are actually extremely specific. You have to fuse Destiny Hero Plasma and Destiny Hero Dogma. Now, Plasma is actually not a bad card at all. It's actually quite good. But but Dogma is not a very good card at all. It's actually quite the contrary. It's a really bad card. So you have to play both of them. And that's kind of an issue. It's not difficult to summon by any means, again, because you have Destiny Fusion, and Destiny Fusion's just one of the best fusion spells ever written. So it's not particularly difficult to summon. You would only have to run 1 copy of Dogma. But this effect, the effect of this card is again half decent. So what it does is you can target a card your monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack. This card has always been used in a variety of FTKs. If you like, just Google, if you just like look up on YouTube FTKs or the Destiny End Dragon FTKs, you can definitely find them. I know a lot of various dueling computers on various sites like Dueling Nexus use this FTK deck to win, but definitely this is more of like a fringe FTK card than it is a usable card. It has another effect where you can, during the standby phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish another Destiny Hero monster to special summon it. It's almost a little bit like the Dragoon effect. One thing that you'll notice about Destiny Heroes is that a lot of them have graveyard effects, which is amazing, which makes them a lot better than the original elemental heroes. But in addition to having graveyard effects as a general theme in the archetype, also a huge other theme in the archetype is that there's a lot of standby phase effects and kind of like waiting till the standby phase. And on a lot of cards, that's really, really slow. But in some cases, it's actually not a bad effect. So again, this card doesn't have a bad effect. It can bring itself back during the standby phase. Of course, it does need to be properly summoned first. But overall, I'd say it's a half decent effect for sure. The Destiny Dragoon. If you want to run it, you can. There are new support cards that are kind of like built around it. It's got decent stats too. It's got high attack. It's really up to you whether you want to play it. Next is Dusk Topia. I'd say Dusk Topia is probably around the D tier. It's not like the worst card ever, but its effects are kind of contrary to what makes sense. So the fusion material for this card is a Destiny Hero fusion monster and a Destiny Hero monster. So it's dumb that if you're gonna have to put in the resources of fusing with a an already fusion monster, that means you would have to have had a spell card, like you'd have to have a polymerization or Destiny fusion and 2 monsters to make that very first Destiny Hero fusion. And now you're going to go into this. So you have to put quite a few resources into this. So this effect's got to be pretty good. The problem is it's not. What this does is on fusion summon, you can fusion summon a monster using monsters from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand and field as material. So basically like circumvents polymerization on someone. You can just fusion summon. The problem is you've already poured quite a few resources into already making this card. So what exactly are you going to fusion summon? It's a pretty generic fusion summoning effect, but again, it's got to be worthwhile. You can't just fusion summon into anything. So basically, yeah, there's nothing really worth fusion summoning since you've already put so many resources in it. The other quick effect that it has is quick effect. You can target a monster on the field and that monster can be destroyed by battle or card effect, and no battle damage is taken from like battle including that monster. Again, this effect is kind of like iffy. I don't really see a huge point in it. Like, it's cool protection effect. It's like a quick effect protection effect. But there's so much non-targeting removal in the game. And like non-targeting, non-destruction removal that effect just doesn't really do enough. It's just a really, really big fusion monster. It requires a ton of resources. When there are just better fusion monsters to summon in this archetype, I would probably stick away from this card. Next is Destiny Hero Dangerous. I'd say this is probably like an A tier card, maybe high B, low A tier. This card is actually quite good. So basically with this card, fusion requirements really matter with Destiny Heroes because Destiny Fusion allows you to send from the deck. So it's cool when the requirements are very generic, and this card's requirements are extremely generic. It requires 1 Destiny Hero monster and 1 Dark Effect monster. That is any Dark Effect monster in the entire game. Tons of them have graveyard effects. Tons of them do stuff when they're sent to the graveyard. So that's automatically very, very good. You can send Shadow Mist to the graveyard. Put that in graveyard as soon as possible. This is a very, very generic fusion summoning requirement. So that is very good about this card. Next, it's got a quick effect that is also pretty good, which is you can discard 1 card and then send a Destiny Hero monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, which again, pretty good because it gives you a nice setup for a Malicious play. Always fairly good there because you need to get into Malicious as fast as possible, especially if you're playing Destiny Heroes or just Heroes in general, because that just is a almost limitless resource, especially with the new card Decider. But yeah, definitely very, very strong card. I would say probably A tier. If you're not making a Dragoon, you are always making if you're not making a Phoenix Enforcer, you are always making this card because it's just so generic. Also, that monster, when you send it to the graveyard, you can make all of your Destiny Hero monsters on the field gain 200 attack for every Destiny Hero monster in the graveyard, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it also plays into the Dystopia's card effect, which allows you to pop. So it's pretty cool. It does add up, especially if you're later in the game and you have a ton of monsters in the graveyard. So definitely A tier, mostly because its fusion requirements are very generic. All right, next up we've got Destiny Hero Dominance. This card, again, with the fusion material, what matters most about the Destiny Hero fusion monsters is their fusion materials. How easy are they to summon? And this particular one requires 3 Destiny Hero monsters, which again isn't particularly a bad thing because you can use the Fusion Destiny to summon it. So basically you get to send 3 cards to the graveyard, which isn't bad because almost all of the Destiny Hero monsters have graveyard effects, so it's perfectly cool. Yeah, so fairly good fusion and summoning requirements. This is less good in a pure hero build because obviously in a total hero deck, like in a Destiny hero deck, this card is super good. But if you're playing like heroes, like heroes with the Stratos and all of that other stuff, you don't want to play too many Destiny hero monsters because they become bricks at some point. So probably better in a pure Destiny hero build. But basically, what this card gets to do is during your main phase, you can look at your opponent's top 5 cards and then rearrange them in any order. Pretty cool because you can make them basically brick if they're going second, but in reality they've got 5 other cards that are good. It's not the best effect, it's not the worst effect. It's a decent effect. It's better to have it than not have it, I'll say that, but it's not like a game breaking effect. It has another effect where if it destroys your opponent's monster by battle, you can draw a card, which again isn't like the worst effect, but I mean you're pouring 3 monsters into this card. I would think that the effects would be a lot better than destroy a monster, draw a card. I mean, that seems like an extremely weak. That seems like a 2003 effect. It's like very, very weak. And then it has another effect where if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 3 monsters with different names in your graveyard, 3 Destiny Hero monsters in your graveyard with different names, and then special summon them, which again isn't particularly bad because it floats, but again this suffers from similar restrictions of other cards where there's so much non-targeting, non-destruction removal that a smart opponent that just reads that card just won't attack it. They won't attack it. They won't destroy it by card effects. So that effect they can just circumvent that effect if anything. Again, the best part about this card is just the fusion requirements. So I'd say probably like higher B tier is pretty decent for this card. Next we've got Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. This one is like, I mean, Phoenix Enforcer is easily the best fusion monster, the best extra deck monster of the entire archetype. It's good in pure Destiny hero decks. It's good in just hero decks in general, and it's very good in just the generic meta overall. It's an extremely strong card. This card does so many good things for the deck and just so many good things in general. This card is like the LeBron James of Yu-Gi-Oh! It not only is it decent already, but then it brings its amazing teammates. So basically you activate Destiny Fusion, you can use 2 different engines. You can either send Malicious and Decider, which is like an extender engine, or you can send the Celestial and the Dasher. So both engines are really good to send to the graveyard because the Celestial Dasher engine will allow you to special summon next turn and draw 2 cards, and then the other engine basically allows you to just keep extending for the rest of the turn. It's better in like a pure Destiny hero or hero build, but than it is like generically, but it's still a very, very strong engine. Either engine is very good. That's mostly why it's good, because it has like, it basically is like a super team. Destiny Fusion is a very good card, and every card that you can send to the graveyard and Phoenix Enforcer are all good cards. Nothing is bad about them. So there's really not a lot of drawbacks to playing this card, both generically and in hero builds. Also, what's good about this card, that's before we even start talking about what the card actually does. That's just the ability to send stuff to the graveyard. Now, what Phoenix Enforcer actually does is you can target a card you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy them both. I'm sorry, that effect doesn't even target. You can basically destroy one card you control, one card your opponent controls. So even if they shift the stuff on their field, you can just readjust whatever to destroy something else. So that effect is very, very good. Also, this has an effect where if it is destroyed, you can activate the effect immediately, and the next standby phase, you can special summon a Destiny hero monster to your side of the field. Extremely, extremely good effect. The first effect makes sure that the second effect always fulfills itself. So basically, your opponent, I don't know, let's say your opponent activates a field spell. You activate Phoenix Enforcer, pop the field spell, pop itself, activate Phoenix Enforcer in the graveyard, and now that Phoenix Enforcer is coming back the next turn. And that is, of course, a quick effect. So that comes back every single turn, popping a card for free. It's extremely, extremely strong. Also, this obviously can pop things like Artifact Scythe and Artifact Lancia. It can pop a variety of cards like that where it's beneficial for your cards to get popped, and then you can lock your opponent out of special summoning from the extra deck. Overall, this card is extremely, extremely strong. Just easily one of the better Destiny Hero monsters ever made. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Cross Crusader. I'd say this is probably like top of A tier. It's a very, very strong card. Again, if you're playing pure heroes, you're playing this. If you're playing pure Destiny heroes, you're playing this. This isn't quite as, obviously, it's not. You're not going to play it generically because it locks you into hero monsters for the entire turn that you use this card's effects. You can only summon hero monsters, so you can't just splash this engine into anything. But it's a very, very good card. Basically, on summon, all it requires is 2 warrior monsters. On summon, it basically can special summon any Destiny hero monster from the graveyard, which is already pretty cool. You can summon like a Malicious. You can summon anything, even ones that activate on summon. You can summon them because it doesn't like negate their effects or anything. So you can summon a Destiny hero monster from your graveyard on summon, which is pretty cool because you get, again, you get back some of the resources that you pour into making this card. Then it has an effect where you contribute a Destiny hero monster, which again, you have it on the field because, you know, your first effect just did it. You can tribute a Destiny hero monster in order to add any hero monster from your deck to your hand. You can add something like an Honest Neos or a variety of other cards that can help you continue to extend, but definitely a very, very strong. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Diamond Dude. Now, Diamond Dude is actually an interesting one because it literally had formats built around Destiny Hero Diamond Dude. It's a good card. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's a good card. I think it is. And before I talk too much, I think it's right around like C tier. And the reason is this card is just not as strong as it used to be. A lot of the cards that used to be compatible with Diamond Dude are kind of like banned or gone. So there used to be a deck called Diamond Dude Turbo that would basically abuse Diamond Dude to cheat around various costs of various card effects. So basically what Diamond Dude does is once per turn, you can excavate the top card of your deck. If it's a spell, you can send it to the graveyard. If it's a monster or a trap, you put it back to the bottom of your deck. But if it's a spell, you can excavate it to the, basically it goes to the graveyard. And then during the main phase of the next turn, you can apply that spell card's effect. Now, the reason that effect is so good is because it actually gets around any cost to any card effect. You basically don't have to pay costs. Like, let's say you excavated a trade-in, you can just apply the effects of trade-in. You don't have to pay the cost because all it does is just apply what the card does, which is draw 2 cards. So basically you can get around a lot of various things. You can get around Destiny draw, for example, because you basically get to draw 2 cards. Destiny draw makes it so you have to discard a Destiny hero card to draw 2 cards. But this card basically allows you to make Destiny draw into a pot of greed. Now the problem is a lot of the really, really good cards that used to be compatible with this are unfortunately banned. So things like Dimensional Fusion is gone now. So there's really not as much of a reason to play the Diamond Dude Turbo. Diamond Dude Turbo basically is a dead deck. There's no point to play it. The other thing is it's too slow of a deck to really play. The only way that I see Diamond Dude getting any modern usage is in some sort of an FTK deck. Outside of that, I don't see Diamond Dude really being used. Next is Destiny Hero Dogma. He is probably somewhere in D tier. He's not like the best monster ever. Actually very far from it. Basically what Destiny Hero Dogma does is it can't be normal summoner set. It has to be special summoned by tributing 3 monsters, one of which is a Destiny Hero monster. So once it special summons itself, that's pretty much it. It's 3400 attack. It's not bad. It's not the best. It's 3400 attack, so that's not particularly bad. And then during the next standby phase, you can basically have your opponent's life points, which again isn't bad, but it's a really, really steep cost for summoning. I don't think it's good enough to play in the DT. I don't think it's good enough to play in a hero deck. The only reason you would play it is if you wanted to use Destiny and Dragoon. That's really the only reason to play this card, because you need the fusion requirement. Outside of that, I really don't recommend playing this card. Alright, next we've got Destiny Hero Dark Angel. Again, this is kind of like, it's just not a great card. It requires a lot of setup. I'd say probably somewhere around D tier. Basically what this card does is if you have 3 Destiny Heroes in your graveyard, you can discard this card, target 1 Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard, and special summon it to your opponent's side of the field. And basically what this card is, it's almost like, it's weird to describe it, but it's like, it's a card that you want to put on your opponent's side of the field to hurt them. So basically, it's like a like the IB, the old IB card that Goki players used to put on your side of the field, and then you basically have to link it away or you can't play. And this card is basically that. Basically, essentially what it does is when a spell card or effect is activated, it gets negated. So the controller of the card activates a spell card. That spell card's effect is negated. You put this on your opponent's side of the field, and then you can basically stop them from activating one spell. It's almost like a it's weird. It's like putting an Imperial Order on your opponent's side of the field. But again, it requires so much setup, and that's kind of the issue with this card. You have to have 3 or more Destiny Hero monsters in the graveyard in order to put this on your opponent's side of the field, which isn't particularly difficult, but I mean, this all it does is negate one spell. Also, you're giving your opponent a free resource, and all they would have to do is just link this card away, and then they can use spells like no problem. This has another effect where during the standby phase, you can banish this card, and then in addition to that, you can banish a Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard in order to put a normal spell on top of your deck. Basically, both players can put a normal spell on the top of their decks, but the problem is this effect activates in standby phase, so the problem is this activates in standby phase, so you've already drawn, so you get to basically your opponent basically gets to put a spell on the top of their deck, but on your deck, you don't get to draw your card until the following turn unless you have a draw card. This card just it's a disaster through and through. It requires so much setup. It basically negates one spell at most. It's not a great card. It takes way too much. There's way too much going on to make it actually useful. All right, next we've got Destiny Hero Denier. This card is actually really good. I'd say probably like top of A tier. In terms of a Destiny Hero deck, I mean, this is a must-have. It's really strong. Basically what it does is on normal or special summon, you can take a Destiny Hero monster from your deck, graveyard, or that is banished. Importantly, that is banished, and you can basically place it on the top of the deck. So the reason that effect is so important is because you can basically place a banished Malicious back on the top of your deck. Super awesome effect. That effect is beautiful. It's amazing. It lets you recycle the Malicious without having a ban list that puts it at 3. It's like, it might as well be at 3. Also, this has another effect that makes it very good with Destiny Fusion and Phoenix Enforcer, which is if this card is in the graveyard and you control a Destiny Hero monster, you can special this monster to the field for free, and remember, special summoning it triggers its first effect. So both effects are very strong. This is the other package that you play with Phoenix Enforcer in a more pure hero build. You play the Decider and the Malicious. You can banish the Malicious, summon a Malicious, activate this effect in graveyard, special summon it to your side of the field, put Malicious back on top of the deck, and then you can just keep extending and do a variety of other things. You can start setting up Dark Law plus Phoenix Enforcer, for example. Yeah, this is a very strong card for the deck. Definitely top of A tier. You can even make the argument that it could be an S tier card. It's a very good card. It's not like super generically good, like you can't splash it into other archetypes, but it's definitely very good in this archetype. With the exception of maybe like a more fusion-based archetype, you really can't splash into others. But this is a very strong card. Next is Destiny Hero Double Dude. This card again is just it's a little odd. It's like I'd say probably like D tier again. It's an extremely slow dandelion. So basically what this card does is, number one, it can't be special summoned, which is already bad. It can attack twice during the same battle phase, which that effect is actually kind of decent, attacking twice during the same battle phase, because it's a non-restrictive double attack, meaning it's not like BLS Rest to destroy monster and then attacks. It just straight up attacks twice, so that's not bad. It can't be special summoned, and it's a level 6, which really sucks. Like, why did it have to be a level 6? And it can't be special summoned, so you basically have to tribute summon this. And it only has 1,000 attack, which, I mean, that is just embarrassingly low. 1,000 attack, what's the point of attacking twice? Who are you going to attack? It's just incredible. You can't even beat a Sangan. It's extremely weak. This has an effect where if this card is destroyed and is in the graveyard during the standby phase, the following standby phase, you can special summon 2 tokens to your side of the field that are 1,000 attack each, which again is incredibly slow, because the summoning requirements of this card are just so terrible that overall it's just I don't see a point to play this card, even though some of its effects don't seem bad, like attacking twice and summoning tokens. The other part, the restrictions on this card just totally kill it. All right, next is Destiny Hero Dread Servant. So basically on normal summon, what this card does is it places a counter on a it basically places a clock counter on a clock tower prison on the field, which I'll be honest with you, all of the clock tower prison cards are just terrible. They're incredibly slow. They're not good. There are way better normal summons in the deck than this, like Decider. I don't think you should be playing this or the engine at all. It's absolutely terrible. I think it's definitely F tier. The entire Clock Tower Prison is just one big mess. I don't think it should have ever been created. It's incredibly slow and just in general very, very weak. It has another effect where when this card is destroyed by battle, you can destroy a spawn trap card you control, which seems bad, but Clock Tower Prison actually benefits from being destroyed, so it's not super bad, but at the same time, like I said, Clock Tower Prison cards, just overall, they just all kind of suck. Next is Destiny Hero Dyna Tag. Dyna Tag is okay. I'd say he's probably like C tier. He's a decent card. So basically what he does is you can, he has two effects. He has a quick effect where if you would take some sort of battle damage, you can quick effect, make the battle damage 0, and then both players take 1000 damage, which again, if you're in time, you can win. If you have low, if both players have, if your opponent has low life points and they've somehow created a decent board, you can quickly undo that. So it's like, it's cool that it's a hand trap. Also, not only is it a hand trap, it also has a graveyard effect, which is that you can banish this card from the graveyard. You can target a Destiny Hero monster, and that monster gains 1000 attack. Again, the first effect puts it in graveyard. The second effect gives you 1000 attack. It's not the worst. You can definitely send it to the graveyard with one of the fusions, power up your monster, make it stronger, attack over things. Like, it's not the worst card ever. It's definitely not as bad as some of the F and D tier cards, which are just an absolute mess. Alright, next we've got Destiny Hero Departed. This guy is definitely F tier. I don't even know why he exists. I have no idea. I don't know what the point of him is. I don't know what I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what the objective of this card is. Basically what this card does is during the standby phase, if this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it in attack position to your opponent's side of the field. Why? I have no idea. I don't know what he does on your opponent's side of the field, what benefit that brings to anybody. You're basically giving your opponent a free resource. I don't know what you're supposed to do with this card. Yeah, I don't know. You just give your opponent a free resource. And then this, on top of that effect already not being that great, because it's not like he has some sort of like self-restriction where it says like, you know, this, the controller of this card cannot normal summon or something like that. It doesn't have anything like that. It just puts a free resources on just a free resource on your opponent's side of the field. On top of that, let's say you wanted to set this up. If this card is destroyed by battle, it gets banished. So if it gets banished, it can't activate its effect in the graveyard. Additionally, if you activate an effect that would send this card to the graveyard, it gets banished instead. So if you really, really want to put this on your opponent's side of the field and you activate it, for example, Foolish Burial, the monster would get banished. If you fused it with a Destiny fusion, this monster, Destiny Hero Departed, would get banished. So the only way to get this in the graveyard is if it gets destroyed on the field by a card effect. Or actually, no, a card effect wouldn't even do that either. So the only way that you would actually put this in the graveyard, if you really wanted to, is if you activated a card that sent this to the graveyard for cost. That is the only way to do it. So if you activate Destiny Draw and discarded this card for cost, that is not an effect. This card would be put in the graveyard. You would draw 2 cards. During the next standby phase, you would be able to summon this to your opponent's side of the field. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do any of that? It's terrible. Everything about this card is bad. I can't even think of one thing that is positive. It is one of the worst cards ever written. If you know anything about this that is good in any way, let me know. Also, this card actually creates an infinite loop with Tiger King Wang Hu, because that effect is not once per turn. So it'll just keep special summoning itself to your opponent's side of the field. And during the standby phase, it'll keep just special summoning and special summoning and special summoning to your opponent's side of the field, and the Tiger King Wang Hu will just continue to destroy it over and over and over. This card creates an infinite loop, but other than that, it's just an absolutely trash and terrible card. I don't see a point to play it. If you do, let me know. But like I said, nothing positive here. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Dreadmaster. He's another one that goes into F tier. All of the Clock Tower Prison cards are just incredibly slow and incredibly bad. There's better ways to play Destiny Heroes and heroes in general than play the Destiny hero like Dreadmaster with the clock tower. It's too much. This is the boss monster that you summon after 4 turns of gaining clock counters and having your card destroyed. This is what you get to bring out. Basically what he does is when he's special summoned, if he's special summoned by the clock tower, you can destroy all monsters you control except Destiny hero monsters, and then you can summon 2 Destiny hero monsters from the graveyard, which is like, you have to put a lot of resources to get this guy, and that's all it does. It summons 2 monsters back. Of course, it has no protection whatsoever. It gives protection to your Destiny hero monsters from destruction, but that's it. Nothing else, just destruction. And then if this card gains attack equal to the attack of all Destiny hero monsters on your side of the field, which again is, he starts off with question marks, so it's not like he's 3,000 and then he gains attack. He already basically starts at 0. And if you know, most of the Destiny heroes, especially the main deck ones, have very, very little attack. So when this card comes out after all of these stupid requirements, it's just basically a big beat stick. That's it. And you have to keep all of your Destiny hero monsters on board to keep this guy out of a lot of attack. So you can't even like link them away and do something else and leave this guy, because the attack alters if you link all of them away. So not the best card. I don't really see a point to play it. It's definitely not worth the payoff of the entire clock tower prison thing. You're better off just playing the fusion build of the deck and playing like a normal person. Forget the clock tower stuff. Alright, next up we've got Destiny hero Doomlord. This card's another mess. He's not like terrible, but he's just like not that great. Basically what he does is you can target a monster your opponent controls and then banish it, which seems good, but that's not it. The monster actually comes back in 2 standby phases. So I don't really see that. And the other issue is you can't attack the turn you activate this effect. This card is basically like the Aku of the Samurai Jack universe. You target a monster, you fling him in the future, and then he just comes back to bother you later. Not that great. You don't even get rid of the problem. You just move it for later. Definitely not the best card ever written. So it used to be decent. Again, when like Diamond Dude Turbo, you could play it as a one-of, as another card to pitch for Destiny draw, but today I don't really see a point to play it. Honestly, you can even put it into D tier. It's really just not that great. It doesn't really solve any problems. Its stats suck. It doesn't have any graveyard effects. It's just a lackluster card. There's really no point to play this card. Next is Destiny hero Draw Hand. This card is actually half decent. I'd say probably around like C tier, mid C tier. Actually, probably better than Diamond Dude because it's more usable than Diamond Dude. Basically, what this card does is if it's special summoned by the effect of a hero monster, you can make each player draw a card. Again, not the worst effect, but not the best. You typically don't want to give your opponent resources, but it is a free draw. And the reason that the first effect isn't that bad is because the second effect fulfills the first effect, which is the second effect is during the standby phase, after this card was sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it to the field, which is a hero effect. So that second effect actually fills the first effect. So this is just another card that you can send to the graveyard with Destiny Fusion. And basically the next standby phase, you get a guaranteed follow-up draw. Whereas with Celestial, you can't have any cards in hand. With this card, you can have cards in hand, so it's all good. Yeah, I'd say it's probably like half decent. It's a decent option if you don't have like a Celestial, but 9 times out of 10, Celestial is the better card. Next, we've got Destiny hero Defender. This is another card that's just in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just terrible. It was never really good back then, but it's definitely not good now. Basically, what this card is just a pile of restrictions. This card at the time had really good stats. It's a level 4 monster with 100 attack and 2700 defense. But what this card does is during each of your opponent's standby phases, your opponent gets to draw a card. So basically they start their turn every single time with a Pot of Greed. It is 2700 defense, which is a lot for just a regular normal set. And your opponent will almost guaranteed not be able to get over this monster in turn 1. So you can like set it, end your turn, then tribute over it the next turn. In a very, very slow version Yu-Gi-Oh! This card was decent, but you definitely don't want to sit on this card today. You don't want to sit on this card at any point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you do not want to let your opponent draw every single standby phase for free. So yeah, definitely this is not a very good card. I don't see a point to ever play it ever again, unless they release some sort of broken support for it. This card is shockingly bad. Next, we've got Destiny hero Dreadmaster. This guy is a hand trap, essentially. During your opponent's battle phase, you can discard it and then make all Destiny hero monsters you control gain 800 attack. Not the worst effect, not the best. I'd say probably around C tier. Bottom of C tier. Dyna tag is generally better, but I'd say it's an okay card. But I would probably stick away from playing it. It's just not as bad as some of the other. All right, next up we've got Destiny Hero Disc Commander. This card is a bit controversial, so if this card is uneroded, it's without a doubt 100% an S tier. If uneroded, this is probably the best Destiny Hero monster ever. But this card has an errata, and that we have to discuss the errata, because obviously if you're going to play the deck, that is the card that you're going to use today, which is the errata effect. And the errata effect, honestly, is a little bit of a mess. This card cannot be special summoned from the graveyard the turn that it is sent to the graveyard. So the second effect will not be fulfilled. Also, if this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you get to draw 2 cards, and this effect is now a once per duel effect. You can only use this once. So the issue with this card, again, it's like Celestial, but just not as good, because you have to go through the trouble of summoning this from your graveyard using another card effect. Whereas Celestial, you can just banish a Destiny Hero monster other than itself and draw 2 cards. It's like a worse Celestial. It requires so much more effort. I'd say probably around C tier. It's not like the worst card ever, but generally speaking, I don't think you should play it unless you're playing a deck that summons a lot of stuff from the graveyard regularly. Then play this. But again, it's once per duel. It can't be special summoned from the graveyard. The turn sent to the graveyard. If you do get the effect off, it's pretty good, because it's essentially pot of greed. But it's just the restrictions on this card are just it's made the card so much less playable than it used to be. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Celestial. I'd say again, this is another like A tier card. It's not S tier because it's not like super broken. It's like before Dragoon came out, almost no one used this card. But now that this card Dragoon is out, it's actually kind of decent. So its effect is basically does this. If it declares an attack, you can destroy a spell and trap card your opponent controls. This effect is actually kind of good in in just any deck. It's kind of a good effect. It destroys a spawn trap card, and then it inflicts 500 life points to your opponent. That effect is definitely a pretty decent effect that you can use. It's very good for playing against like floodgates. Like if your opponent has there can only be one, just normal summon this, declare attack, activate, destroy a back row. Destroy there can only be one. Not a bad effect. Main phase 2, you can fusion summon. You're back in the game. So that effect is actually kind of decent. Also, it has another effect, which is its important effect, which is you can banish another Destiny Hero monster from your graveyard, and then you can draw 2 cards. Now, when you activate this card, you have to have no cards in your hand, but most of the time in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you spit your entire hand onto the board. The only thing left in your hand typically is a hand trap, and if you have a hand trap, you just activate it during your opponent's turn, so when it comes back to your standby phase, or it comes back to your following turn, then you can use this card just fine. Definitely a very, very, very strong card. And definitely if you're playing heroes, Destiny heroes, or just generically the Phoenix Enforcer, you're going to want to play this card. Next is Destiny Hero Decider. This card just has a bunch of like iffy effects. Like they're just decent effects, but they're not like particularly bad. Say Decider is next to Draw Hand. He's like a lesser good option than some of the other Destiny Hero monsters. Basically, it has a continuous effect, which is level 6 or higher monsters your opponent controls can't attack this card, which used to be good at one point, but again, now that we have XYZ monsters that have ranks instead of levels, so that circumvents it. You also have things like for example, you have Link monsters which don't have levels at all, so that just totally circumvents it. So that effect is kind of like if they want to attack your monster, your Destiny Hero Decider will get attacked. It's just a very like iffy, weird protection effect. Then it has 2 effects that are once per duel that I swear to you are not good enough to be once per duel effects. I have no idea whether they're once per duel effects. This has an effect where if it's normal or special summon the Destiny Hero Decider, you can add a hero monster from your graveyard to your hand during the end phase. That's incredibly restrictive enough. I don't really know why that had to be a once per duel effect. That effect's not that good. Like basic Harpy Oracle, totally different archetype, has that effect, and it's definitely not once per duel. I have no idea why that affect's once per duel. It's not by any means good enough to be a once per duel effect, and it happens during the end phase. So the only card that you would ever like want to, only hero monster that you would really want to add back to your hand during the end phase is one of the hand trap hero monsters like Dyna Tag or Honest Neos, and that's about it. Like, I don't even, why would you want to add a Malicious back to your hand? Like, why would you want to add any other hero monster, especially a Destiny hero, to your hand? They have graveyard effects, so that effect, why it's once per duel, I have no idea. Its second effect is also once per duel, which is when a card or effect is activated that would inflict damage to you and this card's in the graveyard, you can quick effect shuffle this back into, or not shuffle this back, but return this card to your hand, and then you can make the damage that you would take 0, which again, like that's a decent effect, but that's incredibly situational. And to make a situational effect a once per duel effect, why? The other thing is, if you normal summon this card, or special, like let's say you normal summon this card, use the effect, get something back on end phase, your opponent pops the decider, and then they inflict, like, they use an effect to inflict damage to you. You return this card back to your hand. You cannot just normal summon this card and then use that first effect again, because again, it's once per duel. So returning it to your hand isn't even that great. Like, I don't even know why you would want to do it, because again, you don't get to use it. Yeah, really one of the worst restrictions I've ever seen on a card. Like, the effects are not that bad, but they're not good enough to be once per duel, which is why it's stuck in C tier. All right, next we've got Destiny Hero Dreamer. Very weird fringe card, probably C tier again. Basically what this guy does is, if a Destiny hero monster you control battles, you can special summon this back from your graveyard, and then that monster can't be destroyed by battle. You take no damage from that monster, and if this card leaves the field, it gets banished. I really don't see the point of this card. It's incredibly weak. I mean, I guess you can like enter battle and then summon this, and then main phase 2 go into link plays, but again, like, why would you do this? There's so many ways that you can go off with heroes and Destiny heroes in general without losing your battle phase. Not the best card by any means. Next is Destiny hero Captain Tenacious. This is another probably like D or F tier. I mean, honestly, these the wall between D and F tier are very, the lines here are very blurred. These cards all are kind of like not that great. Honestly, I should probably put this card a little higher, but all of these cards I don't really see the point to play. Destiny hero Tenacious Commander is another one that's just like not good. Basically what it does during your standby phase, if a Destiny hero monster that is in your graveyard now that was destroyed by battle since your last standby phase, and you still control this card when that monster went to the graveyard, then you can basically special summon this card back. So just do the math there. This card has to be on field. It's an 800 attack monster. It has to be on the field. Another one of your Destiny hero monsters has to be destroyed, and then a standby phase has to go by, and then another standby phase has to go by, because it's has to be in the graveyard since your last standby phase. So you basically have to wait 2 standby phases, and then you can summon that monster back during the standby phase. You have to wait essentially 2 standby phases while having this card on the field, while your monster got destroyed by battle. The more I talk about it, the more I realize how much this card sucks. F tier. Definitely not a great card. Next, we've got Destiny hero Monger. This is another one. This has a, like, it has one of Phoenix Enforcer's effects, which is if this card, during your standby phase, if this card's in your graveyard because it was destroyed by battle and sent their last turn, you can target a Destiny hero monster in your graveyard and special summon that monster back. It's basically like a very, 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 very weak version of Destiny hero Phoenix Enforcer that is not that great. So it's not like the worst card, because obviously like Captain Tenacious is a million times worse, but it's still a very, very, very bad card. Next we've got Dasher. Dasher is a level 6 monster, but it gives you a free special summon from the hand. I'd say this card is probably like bottom of B tier. It's not like the worst card, it's just the best card to send to the graveyard to summon Phoenix Enforcer, because it doesn't require you to play anything else. You can also play like Destiny hero Malicious. Malicious is another really, really good target for Phoenix Enforcer, because Phoenix Enforcer, one of the fusion requirements is a level 6 Destiny Hero monster. This is the other one that's really good. This one doesn't require you to play any sort of bricks whatsoever. You just play this card, and during the draw phase, if you draw a monster, you can reveal and then special summon if this card's in the graveyard. You can only use that effect once per duel. It's not the worst effect ever. It's not the best effect ever. It's just the best card that you have available to you. B tier is more than fair for this card. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Plasma, one of my favorites. This one's tough. It's like SRA. If you're playing a pure Destiny Hero deck, you're pretty much going to be playing Plasma. Like, the deck is basically centered around playing Plasma. I like Plasma a lot, and I like a lot of the new support cards that have come out for Plasma. I'd say A tier is probably like a fair placement for it. Basically, what Plasma does is you have to tribute 3 monsters in order to special summon it. But thankfully it is a special summon, so you can use your normal summon and in addition to that summon this. This card basically has an effect where it negates the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls. That is a continuously applied effect. It's basically like a skill drain effect. So even if your opponent has like a Dragoon, for example, that can't be targeted, can't be destroyed by card effects, you can still negate all of your opponent's monsters, including that Dragoon, which is very, very cool. Then it has another effect, which is like a Thousand Eyes restrict effect, where you can target a monster your opponent controls, steal it, and then this card gains attack equal to half the attack of that monster. So the first effect can negate, for example, Dragoon. The second effect can take your opponent's Dragoon, and then you can gain attack equal to half the Dragoon. Very, very, very strong card. One of my favorite hero monsters of all time. I really like this. The contrast between him and Dogma are like night and day. Like, this card is so much better than the Dogma. It does so much, has so many really, really strong effects on it. Definitely, if you're playing pure heroes, pure Destiny heroes, without a doubt, you have to play Plasma. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Drill Dark. This card's not bad. I'd probably say like B tier, somewhere like around here. It's definitely not a bad card. Basically what it does, if you're playing a pure Destiny Hero deck, this card is like a must. But if you're playing like a mixed hero deck or generically, I'd say avoid this card. Basically what this card does is on normal or special summon, it lets you summon a Destiny Hero monster from your hand with less attack than this card. It's like a Solid Soldier for heroes. They have Solid Soldier. This deck has this card. It's definitely, again, not the best card, not the worst card. I'd say it's a decent effect. What is cool is this card has 1600 attack, so you can special summon like Malicious from your hand, which is typically a brick. Even though it's level 6, you can still summon it because all it has to have is less attack than this card, and this card actually has some decent attack. Also, it has, because it has drill in the name, of course, it does piercing. I mean, they couldn't hold back there. It does piercing, which again, it's a 1600 attack monster. How much piercing damage are you really doing? Not much. So, Drill Dark is definitely not a bad card. If you're playing a pure Destiny Hero build, without a doubt, this card is a must. It's a 3 of. Otherwise, I would probably say leave it alone. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Dunker. This card is an odd one. So, first of all, its name is like completely different from all of the other ones. It has nothing to do with anything. But Destiny Hero Dunker its stats are not that great. It's 1200 attack, 1700 defense. It's a 4-star, so at least you can normal summon it. But basically what this card does is you can send a Destiny Hero monster from your hand, or a Destiny Hero card in general, from your hand to the graveyard and inflict 500 damage to your opponent. That effect is not once per turn, so sometimes you can search this late in game, summon it, and then just discard like 3 cards, do a quick 1500 damage, end the game right there. It's not the worst card ever. It's not the best card ever. I'd say I probably ranked it a little too. I'd say probably like around here would be a fair placement for this card. Because, yeah, I'd say probably around here. Like, it's cool because it's not once per turn. You can just do some really quick damage. And a lot of the Destiny heroes have graveyard effects. So even if you discard them, it's not the end of the world because they either do something in the next standby phase, Malicious, something. There's always something to do with these cards. So it doesn't really matter if you... It's not a huge deal if you are able to discard your Destiny heroes. It's a pretty decent card. Next, we've got Destiny Hero Malicious. This is easily an S tier. It's, I think, one of the only cards here that is on the forbidden or limited list at all. Obviously, it's not the only card that's ever been on this forbidden and limited list. Disc Commander has been on the ban list, but since it's errata, it's just totally not the same. But Destiny Hero Malicious is Mr. Semi-Limited. This card is the only reason the semi-limited list almost even exists in the TCG. At some points, this card has only been the only card that has been semi-limited. Basically, what this card does is you can banish it from the graveyard and then special summon another copy of Destiny Hero Malicious from your deck. That may not seem like a lot, but it's actually quite a lot because you're basically getting 2 free resources over the course of a turn. Every single time you will either fusion summon with this card, synchro summon with this card, or in modern cases link summon with this card. You basically get 2 free bodies on board, and then he works extremely well with the Destiny Hero Decider. Definitely one of the best Destiny Hero monsters of all time, if not the best Destiny Hero monsters, if not the best Destiny Hero monster of all time. Without a doubt, this card has been meta since the day that it was released, and every single time it's been at 3, it's found a way to be meta. Like, if this card went to 3 today, people would probably run this engine because it's just that good of a card. It's just free resources. That's all I can really say. As long as you can get 1 in the graveyard, you can get 2 free monsters on board. And definitely it's extremely good in Destiny Heroes because Destiny Heroes have 1,000,001 ways to put this card in the graveyard. I would say, without a doubt, if you could play 3, I would play 3, but without a doubt, this is a guaranteed staple 2 of. Next, we've got D Cubed. This is a weird card, probably like a C tier. It's an extremely odd card. This is a kind of like a version of another card that exists in Jade and Yuki's deck, which is a card called Rottweiler. This is like the Destiny Hero version of that card. Basically, what this card does is if it's normal summoned, it's treated as a Destiny Hero monster while on the field, but only if it's normal summoned, not if it's special summoned. It has to be normal summoned. This card also has an effect where you can discard 2 cards to special summon 2 more copies of D Cubed from your deck, but keep in mind, if you special summon them, they don't count as Destiny Hero monsters, meaning you cannot fuse with them. They are just dogs with the letter D written on their face. That's all they are. They cannot be used as fusion material for, like, dominance, for example. They are just, you have 1 Destiny Hero monsters and 2 dogs. A little weird, but you can basically, you can basically get to a plasma if you wanted. Like, if you're playing a very, I want to summon plasma deck, you can very easily summon plasma with this card because it puts all of the monsters required onto the field to summon a plasma. So that effect is pretty good. The discard cost is a little steep. 2 cards is not a small discard cost. Now, a lot of Destiny Hero cards float, so it's not the end of the world. But again, 2 cards, sometimes late in game you don't have 2 cards, and it's specifically 2 cards. So that's kind of an issue. Then this has an effect where if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can send a Destiny Hero monster from your deck. Again, not the worst effect because putting Destiny Heroes in the graveyard isn't bad whatsoever. But the issue is that, again, it relies on your opponent doing something. If your opponent just reads it and goes, oh, I better not destroy this, and they just like shuffle it back into the deck or banish it, then you just lose resources. You just have these stupid 0 attack dogs on the field. So not the worst card, not the best card. If you're playing like a plasma turbo deck, I'd say maybe consider this engine. It's almost like a that raw card, the Raw's Disciple. It's almost like a Raw's Disciple for this archetype, but with less restrictions. It's a decent card. It's somewhere down the middle. Next, we've got Dr. D. I'd say Dr. D is probably like a B tier card. It's not like the worst card, but it's not super good. Basically, this is a very like pure Destiny Hero card. This is supposed to be Aster Phoenix's dad, who created all of the Destiny Heroes. Basically, what this card does is you can banish a Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard and to add to your hand or special summon another Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard. This is like a monster reborn that requires quite a bit of setup, which I typically don't like because if you see this in your opening hand, sometimes it can be a little bit weak, especially if you don't have access to a Destiny fusion, for example, especially now that it's limited to 2. I'd say it's kind of like an okay card. It's a one of it's like a one of extender that's pretty decent. I wouldn't play more than that. It has a graveyard effect where you can banish it and then you can target 2 Destiny Hero monsters, and you can make one of those Destiny Hero monsters become the attack of the other Destiny Hero monster, which seems a bit odd, but I can imagine situations where that could probably come up. Next, we've got Destiny Draw. This is probably an S tier. If you're playing a pure Destiny Hero deck, you are definitely playing Destiny Draw. It's a very, very, very strong draw spell. Other decks would literally kill for this card. It's so good. It's not once per turn. You have to discard a Destiny hero, and then you get to draw 2 cards. It's extremely good, especially considering the fact that most of these Destiny heroes have graveyard effects. So discarding a Malicious to draw 2 cards is like better than Pot of Greed, because you're going to be able to special summon Malicious from your deck, and then you can continue to go off. It's extremely good. Destiny hero, definitely an S tier card in pure Destiny heroes. It's less good in like a mixed hero build because you're not playing as many Destiny heroes in your deck because it can be a little bit bricky. But I would say probably like bottom of S tier is without a doubt a very fair placement for this card. It's had a very long time of just being in the meta game. It was basically, again, it's another card that Malicious and this card, I remember when they came out, were like $80 each, and they were in a duelist pack of all places. Both of them are very strong. Next, we've got Destiny Fusion. I think this is actually the best Destiny hero card ever printed. It's just that good. It is such a strong card. It's the reason that, other than Malicious, it's the only card that's actually on the Forbidden Limit list out of all of these cards. It's the only card that's actually good enough. The only reason that Phoenix Enforcer is even good is because of this card. If you had to hard summon a Phoenix Enforcer, like you actually had to activate a polymerization to make a Phoenix Enforcer, nobody would play Phoenix Enforcer. Why would you ever want to play it? This card is the reason that Phoenix Enforcer is meta relevant. It's the reason that the card is $100. It's the reason that no one could find a Dasher and a Celestial for the last few months. This is the reason why Phoenix Enforcer is even good. The reason this card is so good is because it allows you to send fusion material from your hand or deck to the graveyard. So that is really good. You can send materials basically from the easiest places, which is your deck, and then you get graveyard effects once those monsters hit the field. So that is really strong. You don't even have to have any resources on board or pour anything difficult into it. It has a slight restriction, which is after this card resolves, and specifically after this card resolves, you can only special summon monsters that are Dark Hero monsters for the rest of the turn. You can only summon Dark Hero monsters. Now, the great thing about this card is if your opponent activates it, and if you activate this card and your opponent ashes you, you can still special summon whatever you want, because this card has to fully resolve in order for you to actually have to live with that restriction. Unlike Red Ice Fusion, which if you activate Red Ice Fusion, your opponent ashes it, you're stuck. You can't summon for the rest of the turn. That's why this card is really strong. Fusion Destiny is a really good fusion spell. It's good to hard draw it and just activate it. It's good to use off of Predaplant Verde Anaconda. This card is extremely good, easily one of the better cards in the entire archetype, if not the best card in the entire archetype. Next, we've got Dark City. This card is basically like a skyscraper for Destiny hero monsters. I'd say probably like somewhere in D tier. It's not like a great card. Basically, if your Destiny hero monster battles, or basically if your Destiny hero monster attacks specifically, not if it battles, if it attacks, and its attack is lower than your opponent's monster, it gains 1,000 attack during damage calculation. Not really the best effect, not really the worst effect. It's not as bad as some of the F tier cards, but it's definitely not as good as the majority of the cards in this archetype. I would probably stay away from this card. Also, it's not like when your monster battles, you have to specifically attack a higher attack monster, and sometimes that can very much go awry. Next up, we've got D-Force. I'd say D-Force is probably like a mid-B card. It's probably somewhere around here. It's actually a pretty strong card. Basically, when you activate it, you can add a Destiny hero Plasma from your deck or graveyard, specifically from your graveyard, which is actually kind of good too, because if you use the Plasma to fusion summon, you can recover it from the graveyard without having to play multiple copies. But you can add a Destiny hero Plasma from your graveyard or from your deck, and then on top of that, it has the following effects because it's actually a continuous spell. Number one, you can't draw cards during your draw phase, which is pretty frustrating, but it's not the end of the world because the boards that you can create through this card and through Plasma is actually really strong. The only issue is if your opponent interrupts you and you're unable to get Plasma on board and then you're stuck with this card, you basically just lose your constant draw phase, and that can be a little bit of an issue. But basically what this card does, it has the rest of all of this card's effects are good except for that draw phase restriction. This card has an effect where your opponent cannot target cards you control. So already that's like half decent. Basically, it protects everything you control. Not just this card, but like everything in general. Like it protects not only the plasma, but this card, for example. So your opponent can't even get rid of this. They'd have to draw a card that destroys like all back row, and then they can get rid of this. So that effect is already pretty good. So even if they have like MST, they can't MST this card if it's already fully resolved and on the field. So that effect is pretty good. And then it has a Destiny Hero Plasma that you control gains attack equal to all of the monsters in both players' graveyard times 100. So if there's 10 monsters in the graveyard, 1,000 attack. Again, not bad, especially late in the duel when there's a ton of monsters in the graveyard. And then also your Destiny Hero Plasma can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And on top of that, it can make a second attack during each battle phase, and that is specifically a second attack. That is not second attack on monsters, that is a second attack in general, which is very, very strong. So I think D-Force is very good if you're playing pure Destiny Heroes. Again, if you're playing just around Plasma, I'd say definitely play this engine, because Plasma is easily the best main deck boss monster that you have. I would definitely play it. It's very good. The build that I have, I play Plasma. It's like the whole deck is built around Phoenix, Enforcer, and Plasma. And Plasma is very, very strong and negates all your opponent's monster effects. And when you combine everything between D-Force and Plasma, it's actually a really, really strong field. Plasma negates all monsters your opponent controls. You can steal a monster your opponent controls. On top of that, your opponent can't target any of your cards. It can't be destroyed by card effects. It can attack twice during the same battle phase. And all of that is on the card. That's a lot. That's a lot of really, really awesome effects, and all you basically have to do is give up your draw phase, which, let's be honest, the draw phase isn't as important as it used to be in Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'd say definitely, I'd say B tier is probably a fair place to put that. Next, we've got Over Destiny. This is another kind of like weird card. It's like decent, but it's not like terrible. It's probably somewhere around C tier. This is one of those cards where it's just waiting for a good card to come out to make it better. Basically what this card does is you can target a Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard and special summon a Destiny Hero monster from your deck. I'd say probably, honestly, the more I think about it, it's probably somewhere around B tier. Probably somewhere around here. In a pure Destiny Hero deck, this card's actually not that bad. But basically, you target a Destiny Hero monster in your graveyard, special summon a Destiny Hero monster from your deck with attack that is less than or equal to half, or I'm sorry, the level is less than or equal to half the level of the monster that you targeted. So, for example, if you target a Malicious in your graveyard, you can summon a level 3 or lower Destiny Hero monster. If you target, for example, a Phoenix Enforcer, you can special summon a level 4 or lower, because Phoenix Enforcer is a level 8. So it's not like the worst effect ever. So you can like target Phoenix Enforcer and then special summon a Drill Dark from your deck and activate that effect. It doesn't negate its effects or anything like that, so you can use it immediately. The only restriction is that the monster is destroyed during the end phase. Let's be honest, you're not keeping it on the field, so it doesn't even matter. It's a decent card if you're playing a very, very pure Destiny Hero deck. Outside of that, if you're playing heroes or like generically, again, I wouldn't recommend it. But pure Destiny Heroes, I would say it's actually a half decent card to run. All right, next up we've got Cyclone Blade. This card is probably somewhere around D tier. It's not a great card. Basically, you equip it to a Destiny Hero monster. Anytime there's like one of these random GX era equips, they always suck. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Ancient Gears, Crystal Beast, it doesn't matter what it is. These random equips always suck. They always have some lackluster effect. It doesn't even gain attack. Basically what this card does is you equip it to a Destiny Hero monster at the end of the damage step. If the monster attacked, you can target a Spawn Trap card and then destroy it, which, again, if you are destroying a Spawn Trap card at the end of the damage step, that means it wasn't worth activating when you summon the monster. It wasn't worth activating when you activated the Cyclone Blade. It wasn't worth activating when you attack. So it's not a Mirror Force, not any of those effects. It wasn't good enough to activate, and now you've gone through your draw phase, standby phase, main phase, battle phase. You've gone through an attack, and your opponent still has not activated that card. It probably wasn't worth activating that entire time, and it's probably not worth destroying. It's just not a very good card. Very, very slow and idiotic form of Spawn Trap card removal. Definitely not worth playing. All right, next up we've got Deformation. This is another tons of setup, low reward card. It's same story as before. Basically, every time a Destiny Hero monster is destroyed, You put a counter on this card, and then when you normal summon a monster during your main phase, you can send this card. You can send this card to the graveyard with 2 counters, and then you can add from your graveyard back to your hand 2 monsters with the exact same name as that card. Tons of setup for absolutely no payoff whatsoever. So difficult to set up, and it does almost nothing. I'd say probably somewhere down here. Incredibly difficult to use, difficult to set up, and does almost nothing. Next is Clock Tower Prison. This is all 3 of the Clock Tower cards all suck. I don't like any of them. Basically what this card does is every single one of your opponent's standby phases, you can put 1 Clock Tower Prison onto this card, and then when you have 4, you take no more battle damage, which is not like this card has no protection. There's no point to really even play this. It's really not that great. And then if you have 4 more Clock Tower Prison counters on this card, and this card is destroyed, you can special summon 1 Destiny Hero Dreadmaster from your hand or deck, which we've already spoken about is just not worth the payoff. All he does is just destroy your board except for Destiny Hero monsters. Special summon 2 Destiny Hero monsters from the graveyard, gains attack equal to the Destiny Hero monsters on the field. Not worth the payoff, not worth all of these stupid tokens and 4 turns. It's even if you have this guy right here, this guy that puts a token on them, it's still just not strong enough whatsoever. Not a very good card at all. Next we've got D-Spirit. D-Spirit I'd say is somewhere like mid C tier. All it does is special summon a Destiny Hero monster, level 4 or lower from your hand, and you can't control any monsters to do it. Not the best, not the worst. I'd say probably avoid it if you can. They're just better cards. Even like Over Destiny is a better card. It's just far better cards than D-Spirit. D-Counter is easily an F tier card. It's probably like somewhere down here. It's incredibly bad. Basically what this card does is when a Destiny Hero monster you control is targeted for an attack, you destroy the attacking monster. This card is essentially a Sarketsu armor exclusively for Destiny Heroes. Why you would want to do this, I don't know. Sarketsu armor exists. Nobody plays it. It's unlimited. Nobody plays it. Mirror Force exists. It's unlimited. Nobody plays it. There are better versions of Mirror Force like Storming, Drowning, Quaking. All of those exist, and still nobody plays them. So why in the world you would want to play D-Counter is shocking to me. There's no reason to play this card. It's incredibly bad, and definitely you should not play this. All right, next up we've got D-Time. This card isn't like particularly bad, but it's really not that good. It's probably somewhere around D tier. What it basically does is, if it was a quick play, it'd probably be significantly better. But basically what this card does is, if an elemental hero monster you control leaves the field, you can add a Destiny Hero monster from your deck to your hand. This effect wouldn't be too bad if it was on a quick play, but unfortunately it is on a trap card, so you have to wait an entire turn in order to actually use it, and it mixes elemental heroes with Destiny Heroes. So if you're playing a pure Destiny Hero deck, this card is just totally garbage. It does nothing. In a mixed deck, it's okay, but again, it's really not at all worth playing. Next, we've got D-Fortune. This is another card that's just F tier, not worth playing, shouldn't even exist. Basically, what this card does is when your opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can banish 1 Destiny Hero monster from your graveyard and the battle phase. It's like a conditional Waboku or a conditional Threatening Roar. Like if you're concerned about your opponent's battle phase and needing to end it, just play Threatening Roar. Why even play stuff like this? What if you are actually playing a Destiny Hero deck, but you happen not to draw a Destiny Hero monster? You set this card, you can't even use it. You might as well just play the Threatening Roar. Definitely not a great card at all. Next, we've got D-Shield. This is more of these battle phase nonsense cards. Basically, what D-Shield does is when a Destiny Hero monster you control is targeted for an attack, you can change it to defense position, and that monster can't be destroyed by battle. It's better than the other two, somewhat, but again, it's definitely not that great. If you're worried about all of these like generic but specific battle traps are just not very good, and you should definitely stay away from them. Next is Destruction of Destiny. This card, it's questionable whether this card is even a Destiny Hero monster, is even a Destiny Hero card. I the only reason I included this is because it literally has a dual disc, and Destiny Heroes are a graveyard-based archetype, and it has a GX era dual disc. It came out in similar sets to all of the Destiny heroes, so I just didn't want anybody in the comment section saying that I missed it, so I might as well include it. And it has Destiny in its name, obviously. Basically what it does is you send 3 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. You take 1,000 damage for each spawn trap card sent to the graveyard. So again, not like the worst ever card, except for it has been totally power crept by Needlebug Nest, which is a card that a trap card that lets you send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard, so with no cost whatsoever. So I just say definitely play that instead of this card. All right, next we've got D Tactics. This card is actually kind of like, I'd say probably in a pure Destiny hero build, I'd say this is probably around A tier. It's actually kind of good. So it has a few different effects. During the standby phase, you can have all hero monsters you control gain 400 attack, which is pretty cool. It's a nice standby phase effect. It's a continuous effect. Even if this card leaves the field, that effect still applies. That attack boost is also forever. It's not like till the end of the turn or anything like that. They all gain 400 for the rest of time. So that effect is very, very good. If a level 8 or higher Destiny hero monster is special summoned, or Destiny Destiny End Dragoon is special summoned to your side of the field, you can banish a card your opponent controls in their graveyard or in their hand, which all of those effects are all pretty good. It's basically like a Dark Magical Circle that Dark Magician have. If you have Dragoon, this card is extremely good with, not Dragoon, if this card is extremely good with Phoenix Enforcer, because you can activate Phoenix Enforcer in the standby phase, summon it back, activate this, gain 400 attack, and then you can banish a card on your opponent's field or in their hand or something like that. So that effect is pretty good, because every single time that Phoenix Enforcer comes back, not only do you get him back and he pops a card, but in addition to that, you get to banish your card. So it's really, really cool in like a controlled Destiny hero deck build. And then if your opponent decides to get rid of this card and this card is destroyed by a card effect, or if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a Destiny hero monster from your deck without any real restrictions. You can add any Destiny hero monster from your deck. All of these effects are once per turn, but they only activate once per turn anyway. Yeah, really, really good effects. I'd say somewhere around A tier. If you're going for a very pure Destiny hero build, I would definitely recommend playing this card. Next is D Signal. This is a super duper power crept card that's probably somewhere in D tier. Basically what this does is if one of your monsters is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Destiny hero monster level 4 or lower from your deck or hand, which is, I would say, fairly lackluster. I don't think there's any reason to really play this. There are just better ways to go off in your deck. The only monster worth summoning is like Drill Dark, because he can do things on normal or special summon, so he's not bad. But other than that, I would say stay away from this card. There's really no reason to play it. Next, we've got Destiny Mirage, another D tier, not so great card. Basically, what this card does is if a Destiny hero monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon all Destiny hero monsters that were destroyed that turn. I don't really see the point of this. Like, why would you want to do this? I really don't. It's basically like, it just brings back everything that was destroyed that turn. I don't really see the point of doing this. It's definitely not a very good card. It's obviously better than a lot of the F tiers, because they just totally suck. But I really don't see the point of playing this card. All right, next we've got Break of Destiny. This card is iffy. I'd say like probably top of C is probably the best for this card. It's extremely iffy. It lets you target a level 8 or higher Destiny hero monster or Destiny End Dragoon that you control, destroy it, and then your opponent skips their main phase, which essentially will skip their battle phase, because if you went first and you activated this, destroyed your own monster, skipped their main phase, now you skip their battle phase, basically they're forced to go to main phase 2 and they can't attack. So that isn't like the worst effect, but it's also not the best effect, because all you're doing is just preventing the inevitable. Your opponent will eventually get a battle phase. They'll still be able to do everything that they could do in main phase 1 that they can do in main phase 2. So that effect is like very, very iffy. Yeah, I'd say that effect is very, very iffy. It's not super great. It has another effect on it, which you can only use one of the 2 effects per turn. It has another effect where it lets you banish itself. You can banish this trap card from the graveyard in order to add a spell trap card that specifically lists a Destiny Hero monster in its text or Destiny and Dragoon. So basically, what are some things that you can add? You can add D-Force to your hand. You can add, for example, the Clock Tower Prison to your hand. Anything that specifically lists. So this specifically lists Plasma. This specifically lists Dreadmaster. So you can add these two cards to your hand because they specifically list a Destiny Hero monster. Obviously, D-Force is worth adding, but Clock Tower Prison, you know how I feel about it. I think it sucks. It's just another way to search D-Force. Other than that, this card is very, very, very unplayable and iffy, and I don't think it's really a mainstay in the deck. I'd say maybe a one of, and then you can send it to the graveyard with Foolish Burial Goods if you really, really need to search D-Force. But other than that, I don't think that this card is particularly that good or particularly that bad. Next, we've got D-Chain. This card is like a Kunai with Chain for Destiny Hero monsters. Basically, you can equip it to a Destiny Hero monster. It gains 500 attack. If your Destiny Hero monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle while equipped to this card, you inflict 500. Again, it's just, I mean, extremely, this should probably join the other battle phase traps. It's just a weak battle phase trap. No reason to really exist. No reason to play it in the modern game. It's just not very strong whatsoever. Next, we've got Diffusion. So this deck is actually lucky enough to not have one fusion card, but actually two fusion cards. They have Fusion Destiny and they have Diffusion. Diffusion is a trap-based fusion card, and basically what it does, it lets you fusion summon using monsters you control as material. It can't be cards in the hand. It has to be monsters you control. And then when the monster is fusion summoned, basically it can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects during that turn. Now, that actually works in certain ways against it, because if you make like a Phoenix Enforcer, for example, you can't even use it. So yeah, it's a pretty like weirdish card. I'd say probably somewhere around C tier. Honestly, Fusion Destiny is such a good card that I don't see any reason to even play this. It's just, this card is a disaster. It's just nowhere near as good. So I would definitely stick to just playing the Fusion Destiny. Forget all about this card. I mean, if you're playing very, very pure Destiny heroes, maybe you can use it. But there's a card called Necrofusion, which does this, and it's generic, and you don't even have to worry about all of these idiotic restrictions. So I'd probably say stick to that if you're obsessed with fusing with trap cards. But other than that, I'd say probably C tier is a more than fair place to put it. So that is every single Destiny Hero card ever made. I mean, unless I forgot one. If I did forget one, let me know in the comments. If you disagree with any of these choices, drop it in the comments. If you have your own tier list, definitely tell me. And more importantly, if there are other tier lists that you want me to do, let me know. Thank you for watching and have a great day. La, 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 la.